Welcome back, everyone. I've got another compositing video tutorial for you today. There's no one right way to blend images together in Affinity Photo 2. Each project is unique, requiring different techniques to get the look that you are trying to achieve. Let's take this image of a wizard against a stormy night sky. Let me show you how I put it together. I actually started by going to Microsoft Designer's AI image generator. I typed in, "Old wizard with long beard holding a sword up in the air in one hand and a staff in the other hand. The wizard is wearing a dark grey robe with white rune-like symbols. He has a pointy hat with a wide brim. The wizard is standing on a hill." I clicked generate a couple times and decided to use this image. Unfortunately, AI has its flaws. This guy's robe is way too short and his staff is pretty tiny. Nobody wants a tiny staff. But I can fix these things in Affinity Photo, so I decided to use it. His robe here looks more like a skirt, so I decided to make it longer. To do this, I went to the pen tool in the left-hand toolbar and clicked a series of dots around the robe. When I had the robe encircled, I clicked the node tool. I used my cursor to drag a box around the nodes and then clicked the smooth button in the top toolbar. This gives a nice smooth curve between the nodes. I'll just make a few quick adjustments by moving the nodes themselves or by using the handlebars around the nodes to make changes to the curve. Okay, this looks like a good selection. So I'll go back to the pen tool and click it. Then I'll go to the word selection in the top toolbar and click that to bring out those marching ants. Then I'll click Command or Control C to copy the selection, and then Command or Control V to paste it into a new layer. Then I'll click Command or Control D to get rid of those marching ants. Next, I'll select the Mesh Warp tool in the left-hand toolbar. I'll use the corner nodes to stretch the robe out a bit and cover up those giant boots of his a bit. With the Mesh Warp tool, you can add nodes anywhere within the mesh frame. You can then drag the nodes around or use the handlebars to warp images where you want them to go. I'll play with them a little to get the robe looking just the way I want it. There, that looks much better. Now, I want to merge these two layers together. So I'll select them both by holding the Shift key while clicking on them, and then I'll click the Group button at the bottom of the Layers panel. Next, I'll right-click on them and scroll down to Rasterize to combine the group into one pixel layer. No self-respecting wizard wants a tiny staff, so I'll work on that next. But first, I think I want to remove this boring grey background. To do this, I'll click on my Selection Brush tool in the left toolbar and paint over the hill and the wizard. I'll speed this up a bit so as not to bore you. Remember, you can make your brush head bigger or smaller by clicking the right or left bracket key a few times. And you can hold the Option or Alt key while painting to remove unwanted areas you selected by accident. Alright, now that I have a pretty good selection, I'll click the Refine tool to clean it up a bit. With the matte option selected, I'll go over this area where the grass meets I'll choose the Foreground button and paint over these couple areas that should be selected but weren't. Then I'll choose the Background option to paint away these leftover pixels around the sword hilt. Okay, now I'll select the output to go to a new layer and click Apply. This looks pretty awesome. Let's work on the unusually small staff next. I'm going to use the pen tool from the left-hand toolbar to make a series of dots around the staff. Next, I'll click the word Selection in the top toolbar to bring out those marching ants. Then I can just click Command or Control X to cut the staff out, and Command or Control V to paste it into a new layer. Next, I'll click Command or Control D to get rid of the marching ants. Then, I'll use the Move tool to select the cutout part of the staff. I can now drag the corner nodes to stretch the staff out until it looks about right. Okay, now to add some background. I'm going to go to File in the menu and select Place. I've got this nice image of a lightning storm. I'll select the file and then drag it onto my canvas. Then, I'll move the storm layer below the wizard cutout layer and resize the storm so you can only see the clouds and lightning. Alright, that looks great. Now, I want to give my wizard's sword a green glow. So, I'm going to go back to the pen tool and click around the edges of the blade until I complete the curve. To move the nodes, I'll click on the node tool and just drag them a bit so they are on the edge of the sword. Okay, now I'll click back on the pen tool and then click the word Selection from the top toolbar. Then I'll select the wizard cutout layer and then press Command or Control C to copy and Command or Control V to paste the blade copy into a new layer. Then I'll go to Edit, then Layer, and then New Fill Layer. I already had this green color loaded, so it color filled the sword selection into a new layer. I'll duplicate that fill layer and drag one copy below the sword cutout layer. To duplicate the layer, just click Command or Control J. Then, with the top green fill layer selected, I'll go to my blend modes and select color. Next, I'll select the bottom green fill layer and then click the FX button at the bottom of the Layers panel. I'll choose Gaussian Blur, check the box, and move the radius slider to about 17. This gives a very nice glow effect. Okay, now I want to make the sky even more dramatic looking. So I'm going to go to my rectangular shape tool and use the cursor to drag a rectangle over the whole canvas. I'll make sure the layer is just below the wizard cutout layer, and I'll use the shape fill color box to give it some color so I can see it. Then, with the shape layer selected, I'll click on the FX button at the bottom of the Layers panel, and I'll select Gradient Overlay and check the box. Next, I'll select Radial for the gradient type. And I'll move the X and Y offset sliders to place the center of the radial gradient up by the sword. Then, I'll click on the gradient box, and then I'll click on the black node on the left. I'll use the color wheel to change the color to bright green. Then I'll do the same thing for the right node, but color it dark blue. To adjust the gradient, I'll use the little hash mark between the nodes to make the green side a little tighter near the sword. Alright, now I'm going right-click on this color layer and select Rasterize to make this a single pixel layer. You'll see a little box come up asking if I want to preserve the layer FX. I'll uncheck that. Then I'll go up to the blending modes drop down and choose the one that looks the best to me. A couple of them look good, but I'll go with soft light. I think this makes the image really stand out. Finally, I think my wizard is a little bright for all this lightning behind him. So I'll go to the Adjustments button at the bottom of the Layers panel and select Brightness and Contrast. I'll lower the brightness down some. Then I'll move the adjustment layer on top of the wizard cutout layer so it only affects my little wizard here. Alright, that's about it for today. If you learned something and want to see more of this kind of content, please click those like and subscribe buttons. And if you're feeling generous, this channel runs on caffeine. There's a link to buy me a cup of coffee in the descriptions. Not necessary, but certainly appreciated. Have a great day, everyone.